For many years, Israel and Saudi Arabia were staunch enemies. Despite not having official diplomatic relations, the two countries have been covertly cooperating on different fronts, and their growing partnership is one of the most intriguing developments in recent times. However, the emergence of a mutual foe, Iran, has forced them to reevaluate their relationship. Israel and Saudi Arabia see Iran as a significant threat to their security and stability, and they have begun working together to counter it. The exact nature of this cooperation is shrouded in secrecy. Still, reports suggest that it ranges from intelligence sharing to covert military operations. Despite the lack of official diplomatic ties, the two countries supported each other in some public statements, which has further fueled speculation about the extent of their cooperation. The world has taken notice of this growing partnership, and the international media has been abuzz with reports about Israel and Saudi Arabia's secret relationship. Some analysts have even suggested that this could lead to a broader realignment of power in the Middle East, with Israel and Saudi Arabia allying against Iran. The significance of this development cannot be overstated, but the question of Palestine's people and territory remains unsolved. For decades, the Middle East has been plagued by sectarian conflicts and geopolitical rivalries, which have fueled instability and violence. However, the cooperation between Israel and Saudi Arabia could be a hope and a spark for future relations in the Middle East. In the coming chapters, we will dig deeper into the history, politics, and diplomacy of Israel and Saudi Arabia, and explore the various factors that have contributed to their growing cooperation. We will also analyze the potential implications of this partnership for the region and the world. So buckle up and prepare for a thrilling journey into the fascinating world of Middle Eastern diplomacy. If you are for the first time here, please support our work, like, and subscribe to our channel for more great videos. The history of Saudi Arabia and Israel is a fascinating and intricate one that dates back to the formation of Israel in 1948. At the time, Saudi Arabia was one of the key opponents of the UN partition plan for Palestine and voted against it. Saudi Arabian troops later played a significant role in the Arab-Israeli War of 1948, committing around 1,000 soldiers to fight under Egyptian command and unifying with other Middle Eastern countries in opposition to Israel. Saudi Arabia also contributed to the Yom Kippur War in 1973, airlifting around 2,000 troops to assist Arab forces in Syria. Despite the stalemate that resulted from the Yom Kippur War in 1973, Saudi Arabia remained hostile towards Israel. When Egypt signed a peace treaty with the Israelis, Saudi Arabia and other Arab states expressed disapproval by cutting aid and diplomatic ties with Egypt. In 2002, Prince Abdullah, the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia until his father's death in 2005, took a significant step towards peace in the Middle East by leading negotiations on the Palestinian situation. He proposed the Saudi Initiative, which called for resolving the Palestinian refugee issue, establishing Eastern Jerusalem as the capital of a new Palestinian state, and having Israel concede territory in the Golan Heights, West Bank, and Gaza Strip. The Saudi Initiative was a pivotal moment in the history of Saudi Arabia and Israel, as all 22 members of the Arab League embraced it and asked Israel to accept it without negotiation. The United States and the European Union initially welcomed the deal, hoping to take part in brokering peace in the Middle East. However, Israel objected, opposing the Arab League's demand for Palestinian refugees' right of return, a concession that could result in the Palestinian population outnumbering the Jews in Israel. Despite the historical rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Israel, there have also been some signs of cooperation between the two countries. They have found common ground, especially in opposition to Iran's regional influence and threat to their interests. This common interest has led to back-channel talks and cooperation in various fields, such as intelligence sharing, technology, and military tactics. However, both countries have denied official diplomatic relations, and the road towards normalization will be challenging. The Arab world has long been preoccupied with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Still, in recent years there have been a significant shift in their focus towards dealing with the Iranian threat. Israel's blossoming relations with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states signify an unprecedented change in regional dynamics. Iran's expansion of influence in the Middle East has primarily been through supporting Hezbollah, a Shia political party and the militant group seeking to target Israel. In response, Saudi Arabia has engaged Iran in proxy conflicts, backing opposing sides in Syria and Yemen. The covert cooperation between the Saudis and Israelis dates back to the early 1960s, when both supported the royalists in Yemen against the Egyptian and Soviet-backed Republican governments in Sana'a. Their intelligence services coordinated the delivery of weapons and expertise to the royalists based in Saudi Arabia. However, the relationship between the two countries was far from cordial. Since then, the situation has changed. In recent years, Israel-Saudi Arabia relations have started to warm up. The Saudis have been treading carefully, balancing their support for Israel with their commitment to the Saudi Peace Initiative. The main reason behind this newfound friendship between the two countries is their rivalry with Iran. Historically, Saudi Arabia, a monarchy and home to the birthplace of Islam, saw itself as the leader of the Muslim world. However, this was challenged in 1979 by the Islamic Revolution in Iran, which created a new type of state in the region, a kind of theocracy that explicitly intended to export this model beyond its own borders. Saudi Arabia has a majority Sunni Muslim population, while Iran's people are overwhelmingly Shia. Today, the two countries are locked in a battle for regional dominance. In 2003, the US toppled Iran's Sunni leader Saddam Hussein, removing a significant obstacle to Iran's rise. Since then, the Iranians have expanded their influence, reaching into Syria, Lebanon, and other parts of the Middle East, primarily by supporting Hezbollah, a Shia terrorist group seeking to target Israel. Saudi Arabia has engaged Iran in proxy conflicts to push back, backing opposing sides in Syria and Yemen. The 2006 war between Israel and Hezbollah was critical in regional dynamics. The first signs of a relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel surfaced during the conflict. The Saudi government condemned Hezbollah's raid into Israel, an unprovoked terrorist attack that killed 5 Israeli soldiers and captured 2 more. This highlighted the Saudis' opposition to Iran's Middle East influence, a sentiment shared by the Israeli government. Their mutual goal of containing Iran brought Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and Saudi National Security Advisor Banwar bin Sultan together for a meeting in Jordan in September 2006. However, when news of this meeting was leaked to the public, Saudi officials were upset. A perception of cozying up to Israel could isolate Saudi Arabia from the other Arab nations, an outcome the Saudis have worked hard to prevent. Saudi Arabia's Gulf allies Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates recognized Israel in 2020 to get the Saudi support against Iran. The Saudis have allowed direct flights from Tel Aviv to Manama, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai to cross over their territory. Bahrain in particular is an essential country for Saudi Arabia. The two countries are connected by the 15-mile-long King Fahd Causeway, Bahrain's only access to the mainland. The Saudis' support for Bahrain's decision to recognize Israel and exchange ambassadors reflects the importance of countering Iran's regional influence. With the recognition of Israel by Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, many experts predict that Saudi Arabia could be the country to normalize ties with Israel. However, the Saudis have been more cautious in their approach, wary of the potential backlash from the Arab street and their population, which still harbors anti-Israel sentiment. Despite the challenges, the Saudis have taken several steps that suggest a warm relationship with Israel. For example, in April 2018, Saudi Arabia allowed Air India to use its airspace for direct flights from Tel Aviv to New Delhi, marking a significant step in normalizing ties between the two countries. Moreover, in October 2018, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman made a rare public statement in which he acknowledged the rights of the Jewish people to their homeland. While not explicitly mentioning Israel, the statement was widely interpreted as a sign of warming relations between the two countries. Israel and Saudi Arabia have gradually expanded diplomatic cooperation through intelligence sharing, behind-the-scenes meetings, and even public support for each other. Unexpectedly, a mutual dislike of Obama's presidency merged the two sides. Both countries opposed the Iranian nuclear deal, deeming it insufficient to prevent Iranian aggression. Saudi Arabia also recognized that Israel's technological prowess could be a helpful ally. Yossi Cohen, chief of Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, has regularly met with Saudi Arabian officials to share information and discuss strategy for security against Iran. Cooperation has emerged in other diplomatic tracks as well. For example, when Saudi Arabia announced its plan in 2016 to take over the islands of Tiran and Sanafir from Egypt, Israel approved the deal. More significantly, Saudi Arabia found itself in a storm of controversy after Jamal Khashoggi, a Saudi dissident and journalist for the Washington Post, was assassinated by Saudi government agents in Turkey. Despite international criticism, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu publicly defended Saudi Arabia. He was one of the few global leaders to do so. The shift in Arab countries' focus from the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to dealing with the Iranian threat has opened up new opportunities for cooperation between Israel and Saudi Arabia. While the relationship remains complex and delicate, the two countries aim to contain Iran's influence in the region. As the Middle East continues to evolve, it will be interesting to see how this relationship develops and whether other Arab countries will follow suit in normalizing ties with Israel. As a result of shifting regional dynamics and the evolving geopolitical landscape in the Middle East, ties between the Palestinians and Saudi Arabia are becoming shaky. For many years, the Palestinians enjoyed strong support from Saudi Arabia, which viewed itself as a leader in the Muslim world and a champion of the Palestinian cause. However, recent developments have strained the relationship between the two sides, leaving many Palestinians feeling abandoned and betrayed. One of the main factors driving this rift is the growing relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel. As discussed in the previous chapter, the Saudis have been warming up to Israel recently due to their shared opposition to Iran and its regional ambitions. This has put the Palestinians in an awkward position. They have long been seen as the primary victims and enemies of Israel. They have relied on Arab support to help them fight for independence. To make matters worse, the Trump administration's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and move the U.S. embassy there was a significant blow to the Palestinian cause. Saudi Arabia, which has traditionally been a critical mediator in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, was largely silent on the issue, fueling speculation that the kingdom agreed to U.S. and Israeli demands at the expense of the Palestinians. In addition to these geopolitical shifts, internal factors have driven the rift between the Palestinians and Saudi Arabia. One of the most significant is the ongoing feud between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, the Islamic group that governs the Gaza Strip. Saudi Arabia has traditionally supported the PA, which is led by Mahmoud Abbas, and has been the internationally recognized representative of the Palestinian people for many years. However, in recent years, the kingdom has grown frustrated with the PA's inability to progress in its negotiations with Israel. It has started to look for alternative partners in the Palestinian territories. Hamas, backed by Iran, has been the primary beneficiary of this shift. In 2017, the group's leader Ismail Haniyeh visited Saudi Arabia, where he met with King Salman and other top officials. This was a significant sign of Saudi Arabia's growing willingness to engage with Hamas, despite the group's status as a designated terrorist organization in many countries. However, the honeymoon period between Hamas and Saudi Arabia was short-lived. In 2019, the kingdom arrested dozens of Hamas operatives in what was seen as a crackdown on the group's activities. This move was widely condemned by Hamas and its supporters, who accused Saudi Arabia of betraying the Palestinian cause and aligning itself with Israel and the United States. The situation has been further complicated by the ongoing blockade of Qatar, which has long supported Hamas and provided the group with financial and political backing. Saudi Arabia, along with several other Arab states, has imposed a blockade on Qatar to force it to change its policies. This has left Hamas in a difficult position, as it relies on Qatari support to fund its activities. It is now caught in the crossfire of a regional power struggle, While Saudi King Salman bin Abdel Aziz has declared that the Palestinians have the right to an independent state with their capital in eastern Jerusalem, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has affirmed Israel's right to exist. He has even publicly requested that the Palestinians drop their demands and work towards peace with Israel. The younger generation of Saudis sees the issue differently from their elders, gravitating less towards the 1950s and 60s Arab nationalistic beliefs of unifying against Israel. Instead, they fear Iran's influence in Palestinian territory, especially Iranian backing of Hamas and Gaza. To MBS and many Saudis, an independent Palestine could make greater regional instability and a more powerful Iran. These factors have contributed to a growing sense of disillusionment among Palestinians with Saudi Arabia, which many see as abandoning the Palestinian cause in favor of its strategic interests. While the kingdom may still pay lip service to the Palestinian cause publicly, its actions on the ground suggest that its priorities lie elsewhere. One area of cooperation between Israel and Saudi Arabia has been business exchanges. Israeli tech and security companies have been assisting Saudi businesses, helping to improve their cybersecurity and other defenses. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz, citing sources and documents, reported in September 2020 that Israeli firm Celebrite provided phone hacking services to Saudi Arabia. In June 2021, a former Israeli military intelligence official led Quadriam, which has been selling its services to Saudi Arabia for years. Saudi Arabia has allowed Israeli business people to enter its soil using special entry permission and their Israeli passports. Globes has revealed that the ban on the entry of Israelis has been recently lifted, and Israelis have started obtaining entry visas to Saudi Arabia, pointing out that tens of Israeli business people visited Riyadh and other cities. Former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited Neom and met the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in November 2020 in the presence of the then U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. In a groundbreaking move, the rulers of Saudi Arabia approved a plan that would allow Israeli Arabs to work in Saudi Arabia and achieve resident status. The Saudis see Arab graduates of Israeli universities as qualified professionals that can benefit the country's economy. Despite these positive developments, there are still limits to the relationship. The Saudi government prohibits Israeli citizens from attending international sporting events, and there are no official bilateral trade deals between the two nations. Moreover, as long as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict continues, it will create a rift in the relationship. Saudi Arabia has strong connections with other Muslim countries and is home to Mecca and Medina, the sites of the two holy mosques, which keeps it obligated to the rest of the Arab world. The Saudis have yet to define progress on the Palestinian issue in concrete terms. This gives them some room to maneuver. Unfortunately, there is no sign that Washington will prioritize the Palestinian issue, so the Saudis will have nothing to point to justify further seeking recognition. However, support for Palestinian rights is still on the Arab agenda, even if it is declining relative importance to Iran. Just a few days ago, two of the most prominent oil-producing rivals in the Middle East, Iran and Saudi Arabia, made headlines as they agreed to restore ties and reopen embassies after 7 years of severed relations. The agreement was reached after Chinese-brokered talks in Beijing, with a resumption of diplomatic ties and embassy reopenings set to occur within 2 months. But just hours before this historic agreement, Saudi Arabia proposed to the United States, seeking security guarantees, help with developing a civilian nuclear program, and fewer restrictions on U.S. arms sales as part of its price for normalizing relations with Israel. Some experts believe this move indicates a lack of trust in the U.S. as a defender of its security and closer ties to China, while trying to ease tensions with its longtime rival, Iran, as a hedging strategy. Although the immediate effects of this move on the Biden administration are unclear, it may create a sense of urgency to broker an agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel. For Israel, however, the Iran-Saudi deal has thrown a wrench in its plans for diplomatic isolation of Iran and the threat of a unilateral military strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. This move by Saudi Arabia to engage with its regional rival has left Israel essentially alone in its pursuit of containing Iran. Meanwhile, war-torn Syria and factions in Yemen see the agreement as a move towards easing tensions that have exacerbated their conflicts. Iran has been a significant supporter of Syrian President Bashar Assad's government. In contrast, Saudi Arabia has supported opposition fighters seeking to remove him from power. Yair Lapid, former prime minister and head of Israel's opposition, criticized the agreement between Riyadh and Tehran as a dangerous failure of the Israeli government's foreign policy. Opposition lawmaker Gideon Sa'ar also mocked Netanyahu's goal of formal ties with Saudi Arabia, stating, "In the end, Saudi Arabia did it with Iran." Despite restoring diplomatic relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia, it's hard to say if this precludes the possibility of the Saudi government cooperating with Israel against Iran. The Iran nuclear program still poses a threat. Saudi Arabia remains concerned about it, though perhaps not to the same extent as Israel.